Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you were listening to this or watching. This is another glorious episode of the Cantina Corner podcast. We are on a roll lately. We are pumping out these episodes left and right, and I am super excited to announce this is our first current event slash political slash life episode. We started off with Marvel to kick this thing off, going into WandaVision. We've gone into a little bit of, different things here and there, and we are excited to get back into kind of what we started this whole thing on, which was, talking about what's going on in the world. It's the whole reason that we wanted to start this so that we can, discuss different things happening politically, happening socially, entertainment wise, you name it. That's why we love doing this. So, how are you guys doing? You excited to get back into what we've been doing since the beginning?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
happy to try and deliver some news through an unbiased filter.
Exactly. Exactly. That's what I love to hear. All right. So we are doing our first current events episode. It is a beautiful Monday, depending on where you live. I know the South right now is buried in snow, so that's interesting. Just to throw out one little tidbit of current events. I did, just to start this off with a joke, I saw a video where a news anchor in Central Texas was saying that they are colder right now than the bottom half of Alaska. So that's interesting. I don't know if you guys realize that.
That is interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't know it could get that cold in Texas, or if
Yeah,
maybe it's not that cold in the bottom half of Alaska. I don't know.
Alaska right now, Alaska's in the 30-degree weather. So
Oh,
Texas is
well.
colder than like mid 30s.
Yeah, it's colder here, so fuck them.
Yeah,
Exactly.
today wasn't a good Monday. The snow's
It's
just coming
snowing
out.
like crazy right now.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I know where you guys are. It's coming down crazy. I know we're supposed to get some freezing rain. So the world's upside down right now.
Yeah.
Which is why it's a good time to talk about everything crazy going on in this world. We're gonna, talk about a couple different topics here. Some interesting things. We're post-election here. New administration. We've got a lot of stuff that we can go into with that. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about, a little bit what happened with the post-presidency that leaked into the new presidency with impeachment, acquittal, all those different things. But where do you guys want to start? What's on the top of your brain that you want to get into with this? No.
I was just waiting
Go
to see
ahead.
how long that pause would last. I think we could start it off with the Time magazine article that came out during this
Yes.
impeachment trial right after the presidency switch over. Um, it's just a lot of interesting things that were said that basically, I mean, it's Time magazine, so pretty reputable source for news for most people.
Pretty authoritative.
Yeah,
Well known name.
yeah, been around I think the longest now for
One
magazines.
of for sure. I mean, it is an old ass magazine though. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, they basically said a lot of stuff in their article that confirmed that they use the word cabal. You hear that a lot in the conspiracy theories that there's a group of really rich people and powerful people that control our government, and it basically admits that. It even goes as far to say that they are bragging how they fortified the election. They didn't rig it, they fortified it so that Trump would lose, which is the same thing.
Well,
Yeah.
they take care to note though, or not. They take care to not say it outright that they were looking for Trump to specifically lose. If you read between lines, it's basically what they're saying. They basically say, we wanted to ensure that the proper outcome was secure the whole way through the process and nothing tampered with it. And that way, the proper outcome happened. Which, if you've seen 2016 when it wasn't the proper outcome, all they screamed was Russia for the last 4 years. So you can imagine that had the proper outcome been, not Trump, or if had Trump won, they would have done the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the exact quote from the article here, which we were discussing before we did this, when we were talking about the fortifying, it says right here, they were not rigging the election, and this is from the Time article. They were not rigging the election, they were fortifying it. And they believe the public needs to understand the system's fragility or how fragile the system is in order to ensure that democracy in America endures.
Doesn't sound like democracy at all.
No.
Nope.
So what they even
Nope.
say about controlling, steering media coverage and controlling the flow of information. And then you've seen right, excuse me, you've seen right after the election some polls that were sent out, and Biden supporters were saying that had they known, like, he'd been for mask mandates, they might not have voted for him, or had they known about the Hunter Biden laptop, which is now open and being reported on now all of a sudden that, the election's over. But had they known about these things, it might have changed their perception or their opinion of them and possibly their vote. So you can see it's like it's what are the tech companies are always worried about and censoring about is, misinformation and tampering with elections, and they're literally just admitting that, yeah, this is what we did.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you could tell, like you just pointed out, with the whole Hunter Biden thing, all of a sudden being back in the news. It's like that came out. I can't remember exactly how far prior to the election, but it was like close
October.
towards the end.
It was
Yeah.
October.
Yeah,
The month before. It was the October surprise that Trump and Giuliani did have planned up for it, but
yeah,
when they came out with it, yeah, news stations. In fact, some of them reported on it, like maybe one or two stories in the beginning of it, just to say that it was information. Again, going back to that.
Yep.
yeah, and then it was never covered again, which is interesting because what, no matter what side of the party line you fall on, when something like that comes into the public eye as far as information that ties to a political candidate running for presidency, it should be fleshed out regardless, like no matter who it is, like period, because that's something that we need to know before we put a man into power. Because I know that Hunter Biden, and this is the thing I usually hear from people, Hunter Biden isn't the one who's being picked for president. Why should that matter? It's like, well, that's still his family. It's still someone that he's tied to. That's his son. That's a concern to be worried about. Whether it's true or not. If you believe it or not, it's something to be concerned about. That should be, in your thought process to pick who you want. And
Yeah.
it's interesting why it got very hush hushed immediately, and there was a lot of hard evidence too that came out with it, like
Yeah.
hard evidence.
There was, and
And
I think the reason they kept it hush this time is the same tactic Trump used versus Hillary, with the WikiLeaks leaks of the emails and stuff that came out about a month before the election. Is the same timing as the Hunter Biden, and they reported on that. I mean, that was all over the place,
oh yeah,
and I think they realized like, oh, we can't give credence to anything this guy says.
Yep.
So
no, especially right at the finish line.
yep.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, like you were saying, Adam, though, I agree, and something I've said, and I know me and Cody have talked about, because I mean, we voted for Trump in 2016, but I
Yep.
think the process that he went through, albeit it was a little harsh, the constant investigations and all, just the misinformation and mud that was slung was a little harsh. But at the same time, I was like, if you are running for president of the United States, I'm kind of open to this type of digging into a person's background like they did with Trump. I think this should kind of be the standard. Maybe clean it up a little bit, like I said, with all the misinformation and all that crap that went with it. But this is something I think could be a standard that I think everybody could get behind. That a president should have to kind of go through and jump through these hoops, because you're the leader of the free world, one of the most powerful countries. We have. I was just reading an article that we got some 3,800 nuclear missiles just waiting, as a deterrent on American soil. So it's like I think this process is something that everybody could rally around and maybe see something go forward with each president, each successive president.
Absolutely. I mean, I will completely agree with that. Every president, no matter who it is, no matter how much I like, hate them, whatever, should be under that much of a lens and scrutiny on every significant and insignificant detail. The whole story of that person should be fleshed out, period, point blank. Like, there should be nothing held back because someone says, well, that's not true. It's like, well, there's a reason we have an election. There's a reason you give the power to the people to vote for someone. That's for us to decide, not for you to decide what we are allowed to know or what we should know.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter. Unless you can prove me otherwise, it should be out there, and then we are the ones who are to decide. Otherwise, it just turns into a dictatorship because the people above are the ones deciding in the first place. So why do we even have an election? Why do we have this circus if you're going to decide what gets thrown down the pipeline? It makes no sense.
That's exactly what it's
Yep.
turned into this last time, is a fucking circus. Pardon my
Yeah.
language.
Yeah, which I will be open to say that, like, I had a discussion with someone about this today. Like, I'm very big on voting. I feel that everyone should vote, but I'm going to be honest. I don't know if I'm going to vote in this election, possibly even ones moving forward, because I don't trust the system just in general. And I just think it's a joke. And I don't know that really any of it would matter because it doesn't seem like that plays into a factor anymore. And I know a lot of people say that's cliche, but from what I've seen this past year in this election, it's just like it's just so chaotic. I don't know. I don't know if I want to be a part of it anymore until it figures itself out.
Yeah, I feel the exact same. I think this is probably the last federal or national election I voted in. Everything from here on out that I vote in, it'll just most likely just be local politics, local issues, things that are going to affect me on an everyday basis. But yeah, I feel the same way this past election. It was just, I don't know. I'm just kind of over it and done with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just interesting. And I know this Time article, which, by the way, not to get too derailed, but as I always keep saying, and Cody and all of us keep saying, with our Discord and all the information that we're sharing, everything that we're talking about right now and everything we're going to talk about moving forward with this podcast and all the next, all this stuff we're sharing in the Discord. So if you hear any of this and you think, we're just blowing smoke out our ass or just, whatever, or, you want to really know about it, come into the Discord because all this information that we're talking about, like this Time article and everything else, it's in here. So when we talk about these things, we want to, like what I'm saying is that we want them to show us the information to decide. We're doing that for you. So you need to come in here and see these things that we talk about because um, it it just gets muddied and I don't know.
Yeah.
It drives me insane when I think about it. I almost get a migraine already trying to like wrap my head around getting into this conversation.
Yep.
So who
It's
knows? Who knows? I mean, this Time article is really long, but I'm going to read a lot of it and really, really dig into it because I was going over these guys with it on some certain things like the cabal thing that Cody said. Right here in the part of the cabal, it says that, and this is from the Time article, which you can see on our Discord. That's why the participants want the secret history of the 2020 election told, even though it sounds like a paranoid fever dream, a well funded cabal of powerful people ranging across industries and ideologies working together behind the scenes to influence perceptions, which is exactly what I was just talking about and what we've been talking about. I mean, and they're the ones that wrote it. I mean, it's right there.
And when you think about it, like, God, me and Cody and my brother-in-law got together every Sunday to watch football. And oh my God, I didn't know the NFL cared so much about me voting in this past election. Never would have thought a sports organization would have cared that much about me getting out and voting. It was so weird. I mean, they weren't the only ones, but they're just ones, like I said, we get together every Sunday. It's like seeing it constantly. It was just, it's so weird how many different organizations came out to be like, oh, get out and vote, get out and vote. Like, why do you care all of a sudden? It's so odd. It was very odd. You could almost feel the coordination in a way.
Yeah. I mean, do either because I haven't looked it up recently, but do you know how many or roughly how many and I'm going to get to the point I'm making when I ask this question, how many or roughly how many executive orders that he's already written since he's been in office these past couple weeks?
Last I checked was like a week or two ago, and he was at 40 something. I can't remember specifically. It was right around the 40 something number. Um, I don't know what he's at now. Who knows? Executive orders have become a huge thing since Bush and Obama. So,
Yeah, and this is where I get to the point I'm going to make is, when I talk about picking a person to, that you want and why I say I don't know if I want to be a part of these elections anymore with all misinformation and all this crazy shit that they're doing, is that you could pick somebody and say they get in and they make all these policies, they make all these changes, blah 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 over 4 years, possibly 8 years. Well, if the next person gets in, they're just going to rewrite what that happened. So, I mean, what does it matter? You got 4 years of what you wanted, and then it goes back to what you didn't want. It's like, it's ridiculous that it can just flip like that.
Yep. I mean, it's the same thing with Trump, to be honest about it. I mean, he did the same
Yeah,
thing
absolutely.
with Obama's policies. He just ended them or switched them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Biden's doing, I mean, he's making some questionable decisions with some of them, like the one where he, I forget the name of it, but Trump had lowered the price of insulin for people with diabetes, and for some reason Biden felt the need to end that. And I remember watching a video of a guy picking up insulin through the drive-thru for his daughter, and after Trump had made that change, it was $65 a month for her insulin. And he went through the drive-thru and he asked the lady, he's like, what has it gone up to? And she was like, $636 a month that this guy now has to pay just to have his daughter survive. That's fucked up. That just tells you, like, big pharma's back. I mean, this is the establishment. When me and Nick are always talking about the establishment, I mean, I think that was the main reason we personally voted for Trump in 2016, was he was anti-establishment, and the establishment hated him so much that it was almost like not that we didn't do our research, and we did do our research into Trump, but it was almost like, oh fuck yeah, let's fucking get them with this. Like, they're gonna love every bit of these 4 years. But like something like that is just that doesn't prove to you that they're caring about other rich people making money and not caring about you trying to survive or pay for someone you know to survive. I mean, it's blatantly obvious right there. Blatantly obvious. There was absolutely no need to switch that.
Yeah, and what's interesting that you brought that up specifically is I was having a conversation with someone about that, telling them because I saw that video and I saw another one where a guy was like almost crying in his car, talking about like he had to pay almost like up to $2,000 a month for his I think it was his insulin, and even epinephrine went up as well. There was a woman
Yeah.
who had, she was like, I didn't choose to have this. Like, why am I being, why do I have to pay so much for something that I didn't decide to have? It's like I need this to live. And the one guy who's paying upwards of $2,000 was saying like, I don't know how I'm going to pay my rent. I don't know how I'm going to do any of this, or I have to pick and choose. He's like, I can't live. He's like, I basically have to sacrifice everything else just to decide to like breathe.
Yeah.
And I was telling someone about all this, and telling them about all these videos and all this proof that I've seen about it, and all these different people upset, and I've seen articles about it. And I told him, and I said, please look into this if you think what I'm thinking is fake. And so he did, and he came back and told me that the information that he had found said that all these videos and posts that he's been seeing online and these articles that he read were saying that they were false, they were over dramatized, and that they weren't true, and that it was just like not the truth, that these videos that people making, it was supposed to be like fake against Biden. And all the articles that he read were stating that the changes that Biden made, that Trump had, wasn't going to affect the individual, what Biden did. It was going to affect the actual company that provides these insulin and epinephrine and stuff, but that it would still be normal for the person that actually picks it up, that it was going to change the financial region of the business, not the person. And I was like, I don't believe that. And I respectively disagreed with him. And I was glad that he looked it up and then like challenged me and we had a discussion about it. But I don't believe that those articles that he read, because again, when we're talking about misinformation, I mean, how solidified are those articles? Who wrote those? You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
watch a video of an actual person, like almost broken down because they're so upset with what they have to do, or you're reading something on text on the internet. It's like, what do you choose to believe?
Yeah. I mean, you can't even go to mainstream news network anymore to get the truth. I mean, you have to cross reference everything you're seeing, and that's you can tell when videos are doctored just watching them if you watch enough videos.
Mm-hmm.
And you can tell people's like real emotion and shit. So I'll take that more with a grain of salt. Like I can't trust CNN, who posted a video of Kurds being destroyed and it was a firing range in the U.S. I mean, that's a blatant lie that they didn't care to. Well, they did admit to it, but very quietly in an article.
Quietly.
I mean, that's massive disinformation right there. I mean, that was like headline news for a week until it was discovered that video was fake and the news was pushing it, and then it just went away. They didn't care to talk about it anymore. It wasn't part of their narrative.
No, it was the same thing that they did. They also showed that video when the COVID was really rampant in the beginning. They showed that video talking about how the U.S. and I preface U.S. United States hospitals were overloaded with people, and they showed this video panning across, showing this hospital room all crazy. But that was in France.
It was Italy.
I mean, correct? Yeah, Italy. It's like you're saying this is the U.S. hospitals. Like, yes, that's still a hospital that's rampant with COVID, but that's not what you're saying. That those two different things. It's like, why did you use their hospital video but talk about us?
Yeah.
Like, you can't tell me that those people, if they're in that position in that news company, don't know, like they're not fact checking those sources, but then they can also fact check everything else, but they can't even figure out like where that's coming from, what country. I mean, it just seems ridiculous to me.
Yeah. If you want to know the truth, follow the money, to be honest with you.
Pretty much.
Money's the paper trail that never lies.
Yeah, I mean, it goes down to as simple as, how do you think the FBI and all these different agencies, find criminals and stuff? They follow the money. They follow the money, they follow the paper trails. I mean, that's how they do these types of things.
And the drugs. I mean, they flood the streets with drugs.
Yeah.
Well, that too, but all that's tied to the money.
Yeah. No, I know. I just had to talk shit about them.
But it's crazy, and then and also another thing that currently is happening that the Biden administration did on day one, because he also, I believe, the insulin thing was on day one, wasn't it?
It was like day one or two.
It
It
was
was like one of the first things he did.
Yeah, it was right away because I know also day one with the pipeline.
The
I don't know if
Keystone,
anyone,
yeah.
yeah, the Keystone Pipeline. If you haven't heard, which I'm assuming most people have, the Keystone Pipeline was canceled immediately day one, which already has irritated relations with Canada. I know,
Hmm.
I believe it's the Prime Minister of Canada, right?
Yeah,
That's how they
yeah.
address him. Okay,
Yep.
yeah, the Prime Minister of Canada was already that's already tied, stress relationships with that, and it's all about going through the green initiative and everything like that. Which I would love if we could have a green world. That would be great, but that's not the world that we have right now in the way that we function. But it's not going to change much when you make oil going through a pipeline from one country to the next, and then you're like, well, we're not going to do that, but the oil's still going to come here,
Yep.
and it's still going to be driven by train, driven by truck, all those different ways that are giving out emissions into the air. How is that any way pushing towards a green world? It doesn't make sense. Or the oil is going to come from other countries like the Middle East, where we're going to be getting oil from them if Canada cuts us off because they're pissed about what we just did. And then we're dealing with them over there, and I don't mean to say them as in like a derogatory sense, but we're going to have to deal with politicians and government over there, and it's like, why?
Yeah. Well, this administration's already made it clear we're going back over to the Middle East to get oil. We're
Yeah.
done. We're done.
Establishment wants to go back.
One of the big things Trump did do successfully was make us self-sustaining, and we're for some reason we can't do that anymore. We got to go back over there.
Yep, they're clamping down on the oil fields, making sure they got the control in Syria, got their troops all there, and who knows too with Venezuela, because Trump was messing around down there, and Venezuela, some of the largest oil reserves in the world that rival some of the countries in the Middle East that have large oil reserves, and it made a lot of sense why Trump and the CIA were screwing around with Venezuela the last 4 years with that that Juan Guaido they set up
Yeah.
and all that. So with them, already ramping up, war in the Middle East for oil, that's another avenue that was already, traveled down a little bit by Trump that Biden could be like, hey, look, we were already doing some down here. Let's just go again, keep going.
Yeah, I mean, in going on with the oil conversation, I saw one of those political satire cartoons. They're usually like the one snippet comic things that usually is just talking about something politically related. It was literally like about 100 planes flying off into the sky, and it showed two people standing there. One guy was like, "What's all that?" And the other one goes, "Oh, that's just all of the politicians or leaders from our governments and from all the different countries that are all flying their private jets or like Air Force One and all their planes that they fly to go to the Paris Climate Accord to talk about, green energy and being clean, just putting out emissions. And what do you think's in that? What do you think's in that plane? It's jet fuel. Where do you think you get that from? I mean, it's like it's so hypocritical. And I understand that they can say, which would probably be their defense, well, that's what we have right now, but we're pushing towards better. It's like, well, it's never changed, and you've always tried to push towards better.
Dude, the defense wasn't even that good. What did John Kerry say when they asked him about it? He's like, well, I have to get things done, so I need to get around in my own jet, pretty much. Like,
Yeah.
his defense wasn't even that good of it. Like, and again, this is the establishment that they basically handed back, America handed everything to.
Yep.
As much as people didn't like Trump, it was a step away from the establishment and breaking from all that, just all the corruption and all that and everything, and now we're just going right back into it.
Military industrial complex.
Yeah, they just have taken back control of everything.
But you want to talk
Yeah.
about hypocritical with the Paris Accord? Fucking France was found of breaking the Paris Climate Accord themselves. So
Yeah, I remember you were bringing that up, and I'm pretty sure we brought that up off air. Like, can you give me any like context on specifically what they did?
oh man, I'm gonna have to reread it. I'll put the article in the Discord. It'll be
Okay.
easy to find, but I know the UN busted them for breaking their own climate accord.
And that's what I'm getting at. Like you said, hypocritical, man. It's just these people, all these leaders in every country tout all this stuff, and then they do the exact opposite. What is it you always say, Nick? Laws for thee, but not for me.
No, yeah, the old saying, it's rules for thee, but not for me.
Exactly.
That's exactly what
Exactly.
they look.
You know, it's the same thing as, you know, all the politicians in our government make all the choices and decisions on how our healthcare system is, but they are on a completely different healthcare system and different health plan and everything that none of us will ever be able to achieve because we're not in their positions. So all the decisions they make on how we get to choose and do our healthcare doesn't affect them in the slightest, and they get it for the rest of their lives, even when they're out of office. So
Yeah.
tell me how that's not hypocritical.
Oh, perfect segue into they also control if you live or die. If you're Andrew Cuomo,
Yep.
you can hide death toll numbers and keep funneling old sick people into nursing homes, killing thousands, and get
Yep.
away with it.
And only
And
admit it after the election.
He didn't even
yep.
admit it. His staff admitted it. He didn't
Yeah,
say
the
shit.
was it the Trump DOJ had a pending investigation into it and kept pestering them about the numbers and like we're trying to get to the bottom of it. They basically stonewalled them till after the election, and surprise, surprise, the Biden DOJ is dropping the investigation.
Yep.
Hmm.
Which I believe is why that staffer came forward. Because when they said to end the Biden administration ended the investigation, I believe that's when she stepped forward and said, "Yeah, this is all true," and she has proof.
Oh, so it was after the fact.
I think it was after the administration decided to end the investigation.
And I guarantee you, she probably waited and held that to see what would happen.
I got a feeling she was working with the DOJ to, you know, anonymously, and then once it ended, I mean, if it's on your conscience that much that you were a part of that,
Yeah.
you're gonna get it out whether your name's out there or not. So, I
True.
mean, she's got a lot of balls. I give her credit.
Well, yeah, because she's probably gonna be watched and listened to for a while.
Yeah.
You know, if conspiracy or not, if you think that's, you know, I'm talking crazy with, you know, the metal hats on your head and don't listen to my thoughts, but that shit happens.
It's only a conspiracy until it becomes fact, brother.
You mean to
True.
tell me they're not going to give her the what is that Lieutenant Colonel Vindman treatment
Yeah,
and like sing
praise her.
this Lord to like high heavens and all this? They're not going to do that.
Whistleblowers
Nope.
should be believed.
Nope. No medal of honor for her.
Believe all women, right?
Yep. Every single person's hashtag and every single person's opinion matters. We need to listen to it. There you go. If you're watching the video podcast, which you should be doing because there's a lot of extra stuff that happens with this, we've got a little visual meme there for our discussion. Don't tread on
You
me.
don't understand liberty.
Oh yeah, I mean those death numbers that he held back were crazy. It's just like how crazy it was that, you know, the minute the election was over, you know, all prior to the election, he's screaming that, you know, we need to shut down, we need to keep things closed, and then right after the election's over, him and what's his face from California, fucking
Gruesome.
yeah, yeah, he was both of them were talking about we need to open up, we need to get back to normal, we need to get people back to work and businesses, and it was like what happened in the past 30 days that made you change?
That reminds me, I just read an article today, and I forget what it was, but California, you need a verified signature of gruesome to. I think it's for restaurants and stuff. I can't remember what the fuck it was for.
I thought I was gonna bring up because about this that his recall petition they needed
Oh,
like
that's
one
what
and
it
a half
was.
million signatures. Okay, so maybe it's the same thing.
Yeah,
So just to even point out more of like talking about the Time Article magazine and the establishment basically giving a middle finger to everybody that thought things were fishy. These assholes want to verify the 1.5 million plus signatures they got on the petition, so there's no fraud going on in this. But yet, when again this was brought up during the election and all this about verifying things and stuff like that, and you've seen videos of windows being boarded up and cardboard put over in Detroit and all that crap, you were called a conspiracy theorist or all this stupid crap. You didn't believe in the integrity of the elections and insurrectionist or whatever the hell they wanted to label you, they'd label you.
yeah,
But it's funny to see now they want to verify all those signatures to make sure there's no fraud going on.
yeah.
Of course, it's only when it's convenient for them, you know, for the people who are making the decisions on when they want to choose to do that. Going back to I can't remember if we talked specifically about this on the podcast. I know we've discussed it in private. You know, like with Twitter censoring, you know, mostly conservative opinions and thoughts and posts, which, you know, say I'm lying or if I'm dying, whatever, it's fact. Mostly conservative posts And all throughout the election, and then all of a sudden, when God, what country was it? I know we were talking about this.
Yeah, it was one in Africa.
Yeah, country in Africa.
Was it
Like
Uganda?
I was gonna say Uganda. I think it's probably that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was Uganda, and I'll check that, and you guys can look that up yourselves if you're listening and watching. Forgive me, it's been a long day, but it was yeah, an election in Uganda, and they Twitter themselves put out a public post on Twitter stating that because there was some crazy stuff going on in Uganda about like censorship and quieting the people and all this during their election, and Twitter posted how they are strongly against the censorship of citizens on any in any form during an election, and how everyone should make up their own mind and be able to voice their opinion, blah blah blah, and made this whole post, and I'll share it in here. I'm going to find it after we record here, and I'll share it in the Discord. And they posted that out, and it's like, how can you say that, but then you did what you did here in the States? And I know a lot of people will say, oh well, they were censoring hate speech and censoring things that could get people riled up and start violence and all that, but it's like but that's not what you're saying now. You said in any form. You know what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
like, why?
Well,
Like, what changed?
just a slight correction. The reason Twitter spoke out is because Uganda was going to block Twitter itself. Like you couldn't use Twitter during the month of their election.
Yeah.
That is why
Yeah.
Twitter got upset because why can't you use our website? Because they felt like Twitter had too much influence on their election, so they censored Twitter itself,
And
and
it's funny
that's
how
why Twitter got
gets
upset.
upset. Yeah, it's upset Twitter. You can't censor
It was
me.
literally
How do
like
you
a
think?
week after they completely suspended Donald Trump's Twitter account.
Yeah. And it's like, how do you think the rest of us feel? And then you're going to get mad that you're censored. It's like, that's what happens. It's the same thing that happened with the insurrection, which is actually going to be a good segue into our next topic here about with Trump and the acquittal. It's like how does it make sense when I just lost my train of thought? Jesus Christ. I've got so much information going through my head right now.
I had
Um,
one last thing to add to the censorship too, but I
Do it
don't want
up.
to. Sure. All right. See
no,
if
go
you
ahead.
remember why. But just one last thing too is the banning of the president. As Trump was at the time, if he really was as dangerous as he was and just that close to destroying America, why would you censor that? You would want him to be able to, so people could know the minute something's going down, they could see if he's tweeting it or whatever. Why would you want to censor somebody that dangerous? So people could find out 24, 48 hours later before it's too late? Like it's somebody that dangerous, you wouldn't want to censor that way. You would want them to be telling their movie that way people can plan for something like this. Again, if he was that dangerous of a person.
Yeah, not to mention if you're trying to build a case for him, which we're going to get into about his impeachment, you'd want solid proof. So the more that he keeps posting things, the more he's digging a hole, and then you're just printing out those pages and building a case, building a case. It's like,
It's just
and
I hate this whole impeachment thing. It's really gonna get me fired up. But go ahead.
It's
well,
stupid.
no, that's what we're going to get into. I mean, first thoughts on impeachment. Do you think it's constitutionally okay to impeach someone after they're out of presidency?
No.
No. It's not to be used retroactively like that at all. It's
Why
only
not?
one
What
person.
would be your definitional reason as to why not?
The Constitution.
Solid answer. Just back on the desk. The Constitution.
I mean, it says it while the
No, I
person's
know.
in office. It's
Yeah.
not something to be used
What
while
do
the
you-
person's not in office.
What are you impeaching him from?
Yeah.
Of being a public figure?
Well, yeah, and that's what a lot of answers you hear from people. Well, we're trying to stop him from running in 2024. Okay, fine, but the problem is that all the things going on in the world right now, currently, as we're talking about current events, you've got people not having jobs, people losing their houses, people not getting paid, the government fighting on whether or not they're going to give us money, all these different things happening, people dying of COVID happening, all this crazy shit. And your sole focus right now is on 2024 election.
Yep.
Like if you
Here's
don't if I'm sorry, I have to
No,
say
you're
this
good. Let it out. Let it rip.
if you're so worried about one person in a 2024 election, you're telling me that 4 years from now you don't have enough time to plan and get everything together to stop the person you don't want in, when that's all your job is to do politics. And you're telling me 4 years isn't long enough to prep so that you can be prepared for that, so that that person doesn't get in and you can do it naturally through our democratic process, that you have to just do it now because you're using the insurrection as a reason as to why. It
They're
just,
basically saying that yeah, they can't come up with ideas that are better than him, so let's bar him from the office.
Mm-hmm.
That's yeah, like you say, that's pretty much what they're saying.
I mean, literally, they're telling you in 4 years, we can't give you a better track record than what he built.
So let's just yeah,
So let's
bar
get
him.
him eliminated.
and it's nuts because one of the things, and I know this is very unpopular opinion with a lot of people that I've talked to when I've said my opinion on this, and this is my sole opinion. I'm not speaking for these two. I'll let them say what they feel about it, but this is my sole opinion. um, the insurrection, to me, yes, it is a smudge on the face of American history to a degree, because people stormed the Capitol, and the Capitol shouldn't have been that easy to obtain, and all this stuff and yada yada. We can get into that for days, but to me, when the politicians, if you go back and watch these videos, and I will make sure to post these videos to show the comparison, since we're discussing this, I will post this in the political news section or whatever section that is going to make sense here on the Discord. If you're comparing it, when the riots were going on all summer, buildings were burning, cities were being taken over to be called safe zones, where they were allowed to do whatever the hell they wanted, and they made their own rules, laws, and everything. They had their own police and all that shit. People were
Yep.
getting robbed, people were losing their businesses, people were dying, cops were dying, all this stuff at a much more rapid rate. And it was being broadcast on the news, newscasters standing here like I'm sitting here right now, with shit burning, police stations being surrounded, burning, while people are still inside. All this stuff's happening. And storming the Capitol, like I said, still a smudge on American history. Storming the Capitol happened. And yes, the things that happened with the people that died at the Capitol is a tragedy. I feel bad for those people. I feel bad for those families, and I hope the best for them. But the thing with the Capitol is, if you compare those two, in my opinion, the significant difference of the outcome is just insurmountable. Like, you can't tell me, in my opinion, that what happened at the Capitol is so much worse than what happened during the summer. That's just my opinion.
No, I kind of feel similar. I mean, we talked about it before too. There was the Portland federal courthouse siege last year for, I mean, shit. Antifa's still rioting in Portland to this day, but the federal government didn't cede 1 inch of ground to them for a federal courthouse out in Portland, which is like Antifa's stronghold and headquarters. Didn't cede 1 inch, but yet you have these people walk in who are not armed at all. None of them came with weapons or anything. Like, they were able to just walk in. It was like, I don't know. This is like one big just like photo op that the politicians couldn't pass up to increase their power.
Mm-hmm.
Do something like another 9/11, Patriot Act or something like that. And then also just the officer that died there that they're trying to, I'm not saying, and again, I like you said, my prayers and all that are with them, thoughts and all that. It was tragic. Nothing, none of that should have ever happened. None of
No.
it. It was completely ridiculous. But just the way the news is treating that story, because it's come out that he died from complications from the bear mace, or whatever mace was used, and they're trying to spin it for a whole nother narrative, which is, to me, is far more evil and paying disrespect to the whole thing itself too.
Absolutely. And there's one quote that I heard, and then I want to get Cody's opinion on this. There was one quote that I heard during the impeachment trial of Trump, where they were talking about the insurrection on the Capitol, and I forgot what congressman or what politician was said the quote, but it was for a staff member in the Capitol, that when they were breaking into Congressional Hall and they were busting out the glass of the window so they could get through. It's the picture that everyone saw in the media, where they showed the security holding the gun, where they had it like barricaded up against the door, and everyone was like trying to peek in. There was a quote they had from a staff member that says, "I'll never forget the sound of that pane glass breaking, and I don't know how I'm going to feel working there ever again." And then he reiterated it, saying, "Can you imagine how this worker feels? I don't know if they'll ever be able to work here again. That's so tragic." And it's like, well, okay, that's glass breaking in a room that there was no violence committed. They just got in. How do you think the people felt in all those cities that were burning alive, and all those businesses that were broken down and livelihoods that were destroyed? How do you think they feel? but we never heard anything like that from them, from the politicians up in Congress, making those statements about, like, I can't imagine, I feel so bad for them. They never said that about them, but then they're going to say that when it's their own house.
Yep.
And it's like, that's very, very convenient that you feel bad when it's directed towards you, but not when it's directed towards everybody else.
Yeah. Again,
Yeah.
showing that establishment or elites like versus us, the regular people. Again,
I
just
mean,
showing.
yeah, I mean, how did you feel about the whole situation? I mean, what was your take on it?
So my first thought as it started was, okay, you're gonna call this a riot, fine. It's directed in the right place for once, because I felt
I
the
agree.
same way as you. Uh,
Yeah.
Rioting and tearing down a Target ain't gonna get a fuck shit done. I've said this countless times to, I think, both of you. I wish someone in, the heavy Trump supporters that were there got in touch with people from Black Lives Matter and did this together, because I think that would have been a far more powerful thing, something that wouldn't have been expected. And I wish Black Lives Matter would go to the Capitol and protest.
They've been the last week and a half. They've been them and Antifa have been chanting, "These are our streets, and we're gonna burn it down." But
Yeah,
again,
because they're
doing
not
that.
getting what they thought they were getting.
Yeah, but sorry, I didn't want to interrupt
Oh,
you.
you're
But
good. Um, but I think seeing a Trump supporter and someone who supports Black Lives Matter, even though there are plenty Trump supporters who do support the Black Lives Matter cause, the actual cause of it,
Absolutely.
um, I think it would have been a very powerful statement to make. But of course, it wasn't, and it was shifted in a way to spend more of our taxpayer money to get rid of a man that the establishment hates. Because when it comes down to it, it was the fastest House vote in the history of our country. I mean, they decided that they were going to impeach him again, and they voted on it in 2 fucking days. 2 days, they got the House of Representatives in there and voted. Now, why can't we, during this entire pandemic, we are still fighting for these stimulus checks that they just don't give fuck all to vote on or bring up anymore or anything? I mean, I would love someone to break down the money that they spent on this fucking bullshit impeachment. The second one, even though the first one was bullshit, I would love the second one to be broken down. And I want to see how much money could have been split between every American. Because I bet you it was a couple $1,000,000 that they spent in about a month period that
Yeah.
could have went out to American people who really fucking need it.
Yep.
Especially Americans that can pay off all their bills to July with $1,400.
Yeah, apparently.
yeah, and again, showing how out of touch with reality these elites are, that they think an American at $1,400 stretch them till July paying their bills. I don't know where the hell they think people live where it's that cheap, but especially if people have kids. Like, I don't even have kids, and $1,400 wouldn't freaking last me to July. And
No.
if you have kids, like that hell's fuck isn't lasting you that long.
No.
Because if there's one thing, if you're listening or watching, if there's one thing that you forgot that I'm going to remind you of right now, and I want you to keep in your mind until the very end of this entire scenario with COVID and politics and everything, the one of the very few groups of people that have not been affected and will not be affected by this entire situation or anything that happens in the future are the people that are making the decisions for you and the people that you vote for.
Yep.
Nothing, no tragedy, no nothing, unless they come to a disagreement which causes a government shutdown, will they ever be affected by anything that they decide. So while all of us are being affected by anything that happens in this world, they will stay the same with their paychecks, with their benefits, with everything. So never forget that.
Yeah,
Yep.
I would like to add on to that. I'll never forget it. It kind of was circling around the internet as of late, but it'll stick with me probably forever. There was an interview Trump did before he even thought about running for president, and it was when we were really starting to get into an economic recession, and he was asked, if he liked this kind of economy and if he would change it, and he said, "Well, personally, I'm a businessman and I'm a buyer, and a recession, there's no better time for a buyer." He's like, "I can buy up everything for cheap," and he's like, I'll be just fine." And I think about that, like all these elite people who are rich, and people always bitch like, oh, they're getting richer, they're getting richer. Well, you guys are just letting them because we went into a lockdown. Look at the guy who owns the, I don't know what his name is. I know he's like Chinese or Japanese. The guy that owns Zoom. His company made like $200 billion or some shit like that during this pandemic. And Amazon went up. I don't hate Elon Musk, but Elon's gained wealth. I mean, all these elite people are gaining wealth as people are stuck at home losing wealth.
Yeah. There were so many articles last year that came out about how all these billionaires increased their wealth during a COVID shutdown pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, case in point, right after the election, I remember reading an article, and I don't know off the top of my head the exact two stocks or multiple stocks that she had bought, her and her husband, but we're all sitting here in a pandemic, and I understand. I will preface this. I understand certain people have worked their lives to get in a certain situation to make the money that they make, and I will never discredit that. But it's hard for me to listen to someone who makes that much money during these situations and try to tell me that things are going to be okay when we're not continuing to have the same comfortability, if that makes sense, as they are in these situations. So take that with a grain of salt. But I just want to preface this with that. That right after the election, shortly after, I think it was like a couple weeks, Nancy Pelosi, while she's sitting here talking about the betterment of America and helping Americans, she's dumping millions of dollars into stocks to invest and to make more money. And it's like, I understand you made that money over your lifetime, fair enough. But how can I listen to anything that you want to tell me when you're sitting there throwing millions of dollars all over the place in the stock market, which is essentially a political gambling system, an economy gambling system. You're gambling millions of dollars that you don't know if it's going to make money. You're just throwing that out the window, whether you know it's going to make money or not, no matter what the information you have, which means that's disposable income to you. So how could I take what you say and feel that you are on the same page as I am mentally wise on what reality is?
Yeah, and then
I mean,
help
what
censor people that make money off the stock market.
Yeah,
yeah,
the rabble. When the rabble gets together and tries to make some money off the stock market, they get regulators and stuff involved and just come in and shut it down. And who said that the Secretary of Treasury that Biden appointed, Janet Yellen, right? The lady,
Oh,
when
yeah.
they asked the press secretary about just their comments if the Biden administration had anything to say on that. She made sure to remind everybody that they appointed the first Treasury Secretary woman, but didn't comment any further on the details of anything.
Just so you know. He
Yeah.
also has a first openly gay cabinet member. Eh.
Trump's didn't count.
Nope, Trump's didn't count.
no, it didn't
I feel
count.
bad for that dude.
And that's another thing. It's like, I understand, that's good, great, grand and all. I'm happy for them for being able to like be who they are and do that stuff. Fine
Yeah.
for them. But the problem I have is like, okay, that's great, but like, how good are they at their job? That's all I care about.
Yep.
How good are they at their job? I don't care if they're the first Mexican, Chinese, Japanese, black, gay, whatever. That's
Vudovic!
great. But how good are they at their job? Tell me about that. Like, show me that.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. I fully agree. I don't even care.
No, I don't give a shit. I don't care. I don't care if they got a dick growing on their forehead and they're the first openly dick forehead fucking cabinet member. I don't care.
They wouldn't be the first openly. Come on now. There's plenty of dickheads in there.
Touche, good sir. Touche. They all got a big floppy cock on their forehead. Yes, they do. Maybe that's why they can't get anything done. They're too busy sitting there shaking dicks and trying to pay, it's a pissing contest.
It's a big fucking pissing contest. Like, seriously.
Shake your dicks. This pissing contest is over.
But yeah, I mean, it just goes to show you, it's like they're focusing on all this stuff that just like, I don't care about that right now. Like, I don't care about those little things, And then you look at another thing I want to get into that Biden has changed, which I have, whatever, he's allowed, transgenders into female sports and vice versa, fine. But right now you're seeing a lot of females out there in female-led sports that are saying that they're in danger of losing their credibility in sports or being beaten. And there's a lot of vocal stuff out there that you have to dig to find, but they're not happy about it.
There's the one thing I will say. The only women not in danger is the U.S. soccer team.
How so?
Because they would destroy the men's national team.
Oh yeah, they would. Yeah, wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
I forgot about how good they are because I don't follow soccer too much, but I do know that. Yeah. because I do feel bad the fact I remember when they were bitching about the fact that they don't get paid on the same level when they're so much more dominant and they provide so much more like winning games and everything else. I forget how the whole soccer thing is with Premier League and all that stuff and whatnot, but and I know they were using the whole thing. Well, it's about attendance and it's about you don't get enough people or revenue in, and it's like
It's a revenue stream.
yeah, and it's like shut the fuck up. Like okay, great, whatever. But it's crazy how much is being shifted, and I understand that that's important to people who are transgender and everything like that. That's important to them. That's great, but in my opinion, there should be a hierarchy to what's important right now because we're dealing with such detrimental things that are causing loss of life that we need to focus on, that we don't need to be. I'm not saying worrying about it. I don't want to offend anybody by that. I'm not saying that I don't give a shit or I'm not worried about that, but you have to understand there are more pressing matters than allowing someone to play in another sexist sport, when people are literally losing their lives by the thousands by the day, that we need to focus on instead of signing an executive order for something that can wait, in my opinion. If you're offended by that, I'm sorry, but that's just my opinion. It can wait right now. It can
Yeah,
wait.
shouldn't
Yeah.
be federal decision anyway.
No,
No, it really shouldn't.
no.
There's so many weird things when you think about stuff like that because we're such a diverse nation, and they make sure to remind us that we're a diverse nation, and not that it's bad, but we really are. We the cliche of us being a melting pot, like USA, it really is a melting pot, and the fact that they try and get everything done at a federal level, which is a one size fits all, for
Hmm.
such a diverse nation, and like there's many different cultures around like the US. Each state is itself almost like its own different country and stuff. And then even in states like, it's just so it's always weird that dynamic they try and play off of ruling at the federal level on a one size fits all, but yet also telling you we're a very diverse nation, and it's just very weird. It's always weird to me.
I agree, and it's a great time for me to bring this up. The people watching this who, you might think like, oh, we lean towards favoring Trump versus Democrats, whatever. I mean, I know Nicholas is probably the best one at being unbiased, if we're being honest
Yeah,
about it.
absolutely.
I definitely lean conservative, but the one thing that Trump will never get credit for, and probably should, is exactly what Nicholas is talking about. During this pandemic, Trump let each state individually decide what they were going to do for their state. He let the governors actually be governors and govern their states because every state's different. California is not the same as Florida. Obviously, their governors have way different views.
Yeah.
But for how long we heard that Trump is such an authoritarian, for him to do that and never once it be brought up, I just want people who hate Trump to just think about that. Like, okay, this guy was compared to fucking Hitler on a countless basis for years. Would Hitler have let his individual counties decide what was going to go on while he sat back and just gave help where it was needed? If California asked for help, he delivered. If Indiana asked for help, he delivered. I think that's something that nobody ever looks at because they just look at the big broad spectrum. Trump's a bad man, he's racist. Let's not look at like what actually is being done. Just like I think this is just kind of a prediction and I could be wrong. Trump created something called opportunity zones for lower level income areas like Section 8 and stuff for the federal
Yeah.
government to literally fund those areas and get them up out of poverty. And I don't think I've checked like 2 weeks ago and Biden hadn't ended it yet. My prediction is that Biden is going to put some more money into that to try to take credit for that. I think their administration is going to try to take credit because that is an idea that has never ever fucking been brought up, and it's been extremely successful so far, but nobody talks about it. And I just see the Biden administration taking credit for this, just like they would blame Trump for something that the Obama administration,
Mhm.
with the kids being in cages and stuff. That started under Obama. It was it wasn't discovered under Trump. They just decided to blame Trump for it because it fit exactly their narrative.
Yeah.
And I just feel like this Biden administration is somehow going to steal this because it's the one thing they haven't ended, and I know it's the one thing that's not in the mainstream news that Trump did. So
Yeah,
that's just a prediction I got.
I could definitely see that happening with the way you see some of the corporate media channels, report on things. I could definitely see them trying to
Yeah,
swing that
and
coverage could
I'm
provide.
I'm not trying to be like any sort of way like racist or anything, but most of these Section 8 places are minority held areas in cities, so it'll just be more to just grab on to, you know, black vote, Hispanic vote, those diverse votes that the Democrats do so much for, they really don't do anything for. I
Yeah.
think that's just going to be a tool used, even though, and it'll be interesting because I feel like there is way more people paying attention to politics, like we've said before, because of Trump. And I hope they continue to pay attention, because if they try to take credit for this, I feel like they will somewhere along the line come across like, wait a minute, this started in 2017, and that was when Trump was in office. So I hope people continue to pay attention to this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another thing too. When they talk about diversity and they always talk about, everyone should be equal. There should be no such thing as race, and we shouldn't focus on that, and blah blah blah. When they're always touting these things, what is the one thing you always hear? Since we just had the election, which is why I'm bringing this up. They always say that race shouldn't matter in anything, but any news outlet you listen to when it's coming up to the election or during election night, what is the one thing they always talk about with these politicians? They always say, "Oh well, if he does this, he's really going to get with the evangelicals, or if he does this, he's really good in this community because he's getting a lot of the black vote. And if
Yeah.
he's doing this, they literally segregate you verbally on TV, talking about you as if you're numbers, talking about you by race, by number, on what this person who is running for whatever office it is and why they're doing what they're doing, because it's going to favor to that person and to get those votes. And they say it to you point blank.
Yeah.
But they're the same people that say that we shouldn't be like that. That's how they break us down to talk about why they're doing it for their race.
We've always been segregated. It's, I mean, down to like these representatives that we vote in get to draw their own lines. I mean, literally,
Yeah.
like here in Ohio, like I don't know what a good example would be, like Jim Jordan. Like, you have people who know exactly what their base is, and they can draw their lines around that base.
Yeah.
There's not a Republican who's going to put the city of Cleveland within their jurisdiction. It's just not going to happen. Because why?
No,
I mean, you would just lose votes.
that county of Toledo, how that's drawn.
Toledo,
If you
exactly.
It's literally like a strip like this, and then like that long. It's like it. When you look at it, it's like that's how you figure. Like it really is like something that it does need to be done away with. You should
Yeah.
just make your districts, and that's it. That's how it's set from here until the end of time, and that's it.
Yeah.
And then you have to appeal to that group. You don't get to win, redistrict everything, and then what it does is just kind of create almost like echo chambers in a way, not the same thing, but you start concentrating in areas and making it really red or really blue, and almost radicalizing, for lack of a better term, in these areas instead of, again, this is our county, the square here. Whoever's in here, red or blue or whatever independence, you have to appeal to all. Instead of just being like that, where then everybody can get together and discuss ideas, and not everybody goes and recedes more into that it's their team and that's it. Our team's got to win at all costs. That's all that like redistricting does. It further solidifies that. Yeah.
They literally segregate us on a map, and we just let it happen.
Yep. You're literally watching it live on TV.
Mm-hmm.
And then the same people that are telling you that it's all bad, but that's how they break us down. We're literally statistics. Like when you watch the election, you're literally looking at all of us as numbers.
You know what's funny about that? China. Was that like 2 years ago, Nicholas? We came across that article where China. There's a movie about that does this. I forget what movie it is, but China literally has ID numbers for every citizen.
Yeah, they do with their social credit system that they got.
So like they know, like, when you're walking in a camera, that's 12, like FN 2187 for a Star Wars reference. Like, that's literally how China is running. Like, that's where we're going. if you think about it, it's just not there yet.
You know who helped them develop that facial recognition technology? Google and Amazon.
You know who helped fund Google? Do you, Adam? Do you remember?
I can't remember off the top of my head. No.
CIA.
Oh yes, yes. When we were doing our CAA discussions, yeah, I remember that now. Yeah, all that money that went into it, and then that's how Google got going. Yeah, that was a crazy podcast. If you haven't listened to that one, we went deep into a lot of stuff with that. You really
CIA
need to
is
go back.
fucked up. We probably retouch on it. Honestly, there's so much.
Oh yeah,
Post some of them too in the
Yeah,
Discord,
we
just
could
kind
repost them.
of section of podcasts from because those ones too are packed with a lot more information too
Factual
than
history.
yeah than what we're doing here. Just kind of touching on current events. Those ones are like a lot more in depth too. So
Yep.
we
I
could
mean, if you
definitely
think,
on the Discord or something like that.
yeah, if you think about it, the closest thing that we have to that, that numerical system you were talking about with China. I mean, I know it sounds stupid when you think about it a little bit, but I mean, the social security number is the human barcode.
No, you're 100% right. That's
I
100%
mean,
correct.
I mean, that's literally what it is. I mean, there's a reason that you're not allowed to exist without a social
Yeah.
security number. That is your barcode. That is your number. That's why you were the only one that has it. I
Yeah.
mean, you might as well, that's why like, if you've ever played the game Hitman, when they make a Hitman, they put a barcode on the back of their neck so they know that that's that specific Hitman. Like, that's their ID. I mean, that's pretty much, you might as well slap that on the back of you because anything you do in life, it might as well be just taped across your forehead.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why identity theft is crazy because you're literally stealing that person's identity. Like, if you think about it, like, you're stealing them
Yep.
just by a fucking number. That number, someone gets that number from you, uses it on stuff. The government goes, "Oh, yep, that's him. He signed up for this credit card. He did this. We don't need to check anything because the barcode's correct." And you're sitting here like, "I never did any of that." But that's all it takes.
Yep.
It's disgusting.
That's
Someone
disgusting.
scanned you and said, "I'm scanning him and I'm buying that."
Yep.
It's crazy. It's great. I'm getting depressed. You
I
think
can
about
tell.
it. I'm kidding. I was like motivated to do this, and now I'm like, oh God, the world sucks.
I just feel like every podcast we do, I feel like this thought radiates from you of why did I even go and defend this fucking country?
It's the best way I'll describe it is when people always say, "Why do you hate the government so much when you worked for them and worked in the military defending the nation?" And I said, I didn't do it for them. I did it for the people. That was the difference. I did it for myself to prove that I am that strong and that I can get through something like that. But then I was proud to do it for the individual citizen. I wasn't proud to do it to protect my government because that's what they were sending me to do.
Yeah.
That's how I always look at it.
Yep.
Point blank. I fucking despise the government, and I took a paycheck from them for over 9 years, and I hate them. And that's
They're
why
all-
people I talk to, they're like, "Why do you say the government should burn?" And I'm like, "Well, yes, I'm being over dramatic a little bit when I say that, but it's just like I'm sick of it. I've seen how they operate. I've been under their thumb, and I hate it. I
Yeah.
fucking hate it." So when people tell me that I get a little too dramatic about things, and I'm like, "Well, I'm coming from a different perspective than you are. You're coming from the outside point of view, and I'm coming from the inside. Not, and I wasn't with the CIA or the FBI or anything like that. I was in the fucking army, whatever. But it's just like, when you see the inner workings of how they do things, and I remember when, and this, and not to get too off track, but I remember when Trump was doing his Republican convention, the Republican convention in Cleveland. I was still serving at the time, and we had to do during our 2 weeks of training, the 2 weeks of training that we were going to do was scrapped, and we had to do 2 weeks of riot training. We got tear gassed, we got beat with shields, we had to practice with shields, batons, all of that. That's what we had to do because that was going on. And they were afraid of a riot, so they're like, whatever you were training to learn how to like do stuff overseas and protect our nation, fuck it. You need to worry about protecting and beating up your fellow citizen. Okay, great. I'm glad I get to do that for 2 weeks. This is so much fun.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, the riot training was fun because you get to play and do all that stuff. But then you think about it at the end, and I'm like, I might actually have to go beat up my neighbor because the government wants me to go beat up my neighbor because of that.
I don't mean to laugh, dude. When you said that, I just thought of Alex Jones. I'm gonna have to eat my neighbor. I couldn't
like-
help it.
No, that's funny.
I don't want to eat him. He's a nice guy.
You think about it. It's like I didn't serve to beat up my fellow citizen. I
No,
served to fight our nation's enemies, and then I got to spend 2 weeks training to prepare to fight my fellow citizen. That's depressing
No.
shit.
I remember when you were doing that, and you were like, "Yeah, we're basically being held in a warehouse, and if we get called on, we get called on. If we don't, we're just gonna sit here."
Yeah, we were chilling, just waiting, and then nothing happened, and it was like great. I got maced for 2 weeks for no reason. I got to go through tear gas for no reason. That's awesome. It's a great time, guys. All right,
Yeah.
let's go back home.
At least it was in
Fuckers.
Cleveland. You weren't that far.
No, we weren't that far, but God, I would never gone back to Cleveland if I had to do that.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, I mean that's where I come from with my perspective. I mean, the government is very fickle. Government is fucked, and I mean, I don't know. I mean, is there any other specifics? I mean, I touched on pretty much the ones that were bothering me the most. That I mean, we're just in the beginning of this new presidency, so I know there's going to be more to come. But is there any like big things that you guys wanted to hit on from this before we end up wrapping this up?
Um, just I some things that like I posted an article earlier and said like some things never change. So we see like he's pushing for the extradition of Assange from Britain. So he's just as much, if not more, enemy of the press than they say Donald Trump was. So
Yeah.
some things like that are continuing. I think his Secretary of Defense pick is still up in the air, and it's that what's this guy's name? Lloyd Austin. He's on the board of Raytheon, a huge weapons contractor. So
Oh yeah.
again, you see, just kind of the same things going on.
Yep. Military complex.
Yeah.
A lot of BlackRock executives.
Oh yeah. Basically, they Goldman Sachs pretty much passed the torch to BlackRock as the the bank that's backing this administration. They're all over up in his administration. So
And China.
Great.
in
Of
China, they got
course.
heavy ties to China,
Of course
which
they do.
which is going to be interesting because that's something going to be that people should watch for is how China does with Taiwan, because Taiwan, Trump was he was tough on China, so China wasn't really they would poke the bear a little bit with Taiwan because they legally own it when Taiwan tries to be its own government and all that, and it's always an area of contention. But now that Biden's in, it's going to be interesting to see because China's definitely going to be pushing it to invade Taiwan. And with Trump, there might have been, I don't know about necessarily a military, full on military, but there was some type of response. But now
Yeah.
with Biden, it's going to be interesting to see if, just like Hong Kong, China will just roll in and take it and not a peep because they took over Hong Kong. There hasn't been a fucking peep of that. Nothing.
No. And there probably won't be.
So that'll be
Not at
something
all.
for.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of that we will be. God, I sound so professional. We will be covering this as it develops and posting it in the Discord.
Yep. We will be
Um,
posting a lot of articles.
yeah, and we have a lot already. I mean, we've got stuff. I mean, I know Nick just posted something. Just a quick little tidbit. Nick posted something on Egypt today that in our Egypt section on Discord that was interesting about the oldest beer. I don't know if I'd call it cellar or distillery because I guess that would be considered a distillery back then.
I guess something, yeah, like that.
Yeah, like 5,000-year-old like beer distillery from Egypt that was just uncovered, like almost the oldest like beer distillery, I guess you could say. So I mean, we've got a lot of cool stuff in there.
Yeah.
Stuff that I'm learning about.
Yeah, it's not all
Uh,
bullshit politics that make everybody mad.
No.
Some of it is just
no,
cool stuff about history. We got video game news will be posted and stuff, and there like a lot of other stuff that you know makes life better.
Sports.
Sports.
We just partnered with a sports writer, so we'll be having a lot of sports writing going on.
yeah, I wanted you to let everyone know about that. Let them know what we got going on with sports because I know we got a episode coming up this Wednesday for baseball that you guys are doing. So give it a little wrap up with that.
Yeah. Wednesday, me and Nicholas are going to be doing kind of like a spring training report. Kind of might touch on a few things that have happened in football real quick. But it's going to be heavy baseball, spring training report, breaking down. I think we're going to break down the NL West to start. We'll break down that whole division, the acquisitions that have happened with those teams, how we think those teams are going to pan out, and maybe a little bit of fantasy baseball prep, if you will, for people who are into fantasy baseball.
Yep.
Which is not me.
Yeah, but I did want to give a shout out to Griffin. Griffin's going to be coming on board. He's already in the Discord. He is a sports writer. He's in college right now, so he's kind of learning. It's kind of a tool for him to get readers going and directly to his content, get eyeballs on his website, help him out, help us out because he'll be pumping content into our Discord and just a perfect partnership in my opinion. He's a really well-spoken kid and he does some really good writing, like really, really good writing. I enjoy his stuff, so I think it'll be good.
Yeah, so if you're into baseball, definitely check that out. I know these guys are baseball fanatics, so they're gonna know a lot about that stuff. So if you're really big into baseball, definitely do that. Unfortunately, I will not be present for that. I will not lie. I'm not the biggest baseball person, so I do not want to hinder the conversation on that. So I will be out for that one, but I will be in on the next podcast following that. So we will. I'm sure that they will let you know on Wednesday when that's going to be. But I do want to say thank you so much for everybody that's coming to the Facebook, the Discord, the Twitter, the YouTube, everywhere that we have our social media. We have already surpassed the likes and follows that we had on our previous Facebook page before we revamped and redid this with the hard work that Cody put in, Sean put in, all of us, everyone here. And I just want to say thank you so much because that is big. I mean, we saw that today, and I know that we were texting each other, and I was like, God damn, this is awesome. So that means everything. Yeah, that means everything. So we are really excited. We're glad you're loving it. We're glad to see all the likes and follows coming in. Definitely check out the YouTube page. I know that a lot of people haven't seen that yet. We have a good chunk of views on there. If you haven't seen them on here, you can see them on Discord. You can see them on YouTube. You can see them on Facebook. If you can, please, it's free. It takes 2 seconds of your time. Hit the subscribe, follow anything that we have on our social media. If not, I understand. I still appreciate you for listening. And I hope you're holding up in this quarantine during all this COVID madness as we're talking about current events. Keep your shit together. The world sucks. Politics sucks. They don't give a fuck. The only person you should worry about is yourself. Don't pay them any mind unless it directly affects you because it's the only way to survive in this world. But yeah, thank you again. And is there anything else you guys want to say before we close this up?
See you Wednesday.
Yep. We'll see you Wednesday.
Peace.
Get ready for that baseball.
Take it easy.